Welcome to Grand Farmer, the podcast where we bring together growers and members of the ag tech community to discuss the latest advancements in technology and their impact on agriculture. Hosted by Grand Farm, this podcast explores the way in which technology is changing the world of agriculture from the perspective of those who are in the fields and in the tractors every day. In this episode, we're really excited to hear from Mike Cully with Susterre and Vanessa Kummer, a farmer out of North Dakota. Mike is doing some really interesting work when it comes to high-pressure water jets for planting purposes in no-till and cutting through residue. And Vanessa is on our Grand Farms Grower Advisory Board. She is always a ball of information, ball of honesty, which I always appreciate, and is a very impressive woman. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation that really dives into what does regenerative and sustainable practices on the farm mean in a practical standpoint, and then how are we measuring the ROI when we're producing, and by we, I mean the industry is producing kind of new innovations for sustainable agriculture. So enjoy the show. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Grand Farmer. We got a great lineup here with Mike and Vanessa. We got connected with Mike Cully about a year ago or so when he was down here with the Canadian consulate. He's a Canadian ag tech startup via Atlanta, Georgia, which is fun. And he's doing some really innovative work when it comes to high pressure water jets and for planting purposes. And Vanessa, you are one of my favorite grower board members. Don't tell the other board members that, but I love your honesty, your opinions, and your insight. So really excited about this conversation. But enough with me rambling on with the bad intros. Maybe, Mike, let's start with you and want to introduce yourself and your work.
Yeah, so my name is Mike Cully, and I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Susterre. As Andrew said, we're a Canadian company, and we're pioneering the use of ultra-high pressure water jet technology in row crop planting applications. And our technology is really geared to promote the use of regenerative agricultural practices like no-till and the use of cover crops. And we make it easier to handle heavy crop residue on the field without adding any additional downforce to do so. And we also inject agricultural inputs into the soil, avoiding runoff and volatilization and wasting those chemicals when they're applied at the surface of the field.
Great. And Vanessa, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a farmer from Colfax, North Dakota. I farm with my husband and our son. And we have gotten more and more into having no-till, minimum till. And I think sustainable ag just means that you are trying to protect the soil and make money and have a generational, by generation to generation farm, which is definitely what we are in the midst of doing, actually, at this very moment. So, yeah, that's me.
Great. And Vanessa, staying on the kind of sustainability standpoint, would you say that you're a traditional farm that's starting to focus more on the sustainability standpoint? Are you is that built into the philosophy of the farm, or is that something that you're kind of shifting into that?
No, sustainability has really always been a part of what we feel we have to do. We are on the earth as long as we are, and in the meantime, we are supposed to protect the land. And, I really truly believe it doesn't necessarily just belong to us, except for the time we are here. And we've always wanted to be the type of farm that can pass it on to the next generation, which we are already in the process of doing, and then to the next generation after that, which we have a 7-year-old grandson. And from the looks of right now, which of course can change 29 times, he definitely wants to be a farmer. So, we always look to the future and try to leave things better than where we came in at. And so we always look at improving. We always look at, technology is one of the ways that we utilize to improve our farming, not overplanting areas by having, the the planter shutting down when you're overlapping rows and corners and things, having a sprayer that will shut down when there's overlap. And so, everything that we are geared towards doing is to make our farm profitable, sustainable, and, just doing things what we consider to be the right way.
That's great. Well, love that. Want to circle back to that conversation, but Mike, kind of going back to you is maybe you want to tell a little bit about the genesis of Susterre, because I do think that is a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, I mean, from a technology standpoint, we're unique in that we're taking an industrial technology that's not used in agriculture. It's these ultra high pressure water jets are used in industrial manufacturing, and they pump water at 60,000 pounds per square inch. And so in manufacturing, they're used to cut through metal in precise patterns as an alternative to plasma cutters and other things like that. And what we're doing is taking that technology and applying it into the row crop applications. And really the use case for what we were doing started with the basic problem that regenerative farmers see often is, how do you handle heavy crop residue? I mean, when you do regenerative ag, no-till or cover crops, you're supposed to leave your fields in those practices for as many years as possible. But by definition, you're building up residue over the seasons, and then it becomes difficult to cut through. And what happens is sometimes the residue is not cut through when it's planted. It's actually pushed or hairpinned into the soil. And when it does that, when the seed is deposited, it doesn't touch soil, it touches residue. And that hurts seed germination, emergence, and ultimately that hurts the yields that farmers are getting out there. And so the premise that we had was that, we have a technology that we're familiar with that can cut through metal. If it can cut through metal, it pretty much can cut through almost any residue that we could throw at it on the field. And so, this technology, it started in Australia about 10 years ago. There was some testing that was sponsored by the Australian government. But really it moved up to Canada. One of the chief product people that was working in Australia moved up there and started working on it for a few years, did some prototyping and everything. But it was really in 2022 when we got our first round of funding that we were able to bring what I would call a commercial-sized product out to be field tested. And we did extensive field testing in 2022 in Kentucky, Tennessee, Iowa, and Ontario, Canada. And then this year we've repeated some of that testing, but we've been happy to be able to expand to North Dakota as well and look at it with the Grand Farm in North Dakota.
Yeah, we love having the test plot out there. So for those that are around the Fargo-Castleton area, we have about 5 acres that Susterre is planted, and the crops are looking great, Mike, for what it's worth. Vanessa, a couple of weeks ago, Mike was in town, so you got to kind of witness his technology firsthand. This is a safe spot with our millions of listeners. Let's hear the feedback. What were your initial thoughts on it?
Well, the initial thought is, pulling a tank behind is one thing I don't look forward to doing because it makes things a little bulky out there. But to watch the jets cut through the, into the dirt did look like it was definitely something that would be interesting to have, especially because, as Mike said, we do have corn trash out there, and making sure you're getting through that corn trash is very important. One of the questions that someone asked me is, how do you make sure then that your furrow depth is where you want it? Because we're planting anywhere from, say, a half inch down to 2.5 inches with the different crops. So I guess I'm going to toss that at you, Mike, and let you answer that one.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the feedback. We're, as a company, we're always trying to get farmer feedback. We've been using farmer feedback early and often. And in fact, almost all of the prototype testing and everything we've done has been on farmers at their farms. We don't want to be in a bubble. And so I'm thrilled that you're able to give that feedback. In terms of kind of the furrow depth, I think for this first product that we're offering, it's a retrofit system that goes on the front of the planter. So for this particular product, we're not interfering with the opening discs or the seeding mechanism at all. Our jet only pumps at a very narrow cut. It's 0.007 of an inch. So it's really built to effectively cut through the trash on the field and then get down to a depth of 3 to 4 inches below the seed bed. But the cut itself is not wide enough to accommodate a seed. So it's really the opener that's still serving the function of getting the proper depth, whether that be a half inch, 2 inches, whatever that is. But what we've seen, which is interesting, is using the jet in conjunction with the existing technology, it really seems to change the whole paradigm of what the planter is doing. We are seeing, we're seeing yield benefits, we're seeing emergence benefits that seem to indicate that we're getting much better seed to soil contact below the soil, below the surface, and we're delivering seed to the proper depth so it avoids, droughts or wet conditions and that sort of thing. And so that's what's exciting us about it. It's interesting that you mentioned the cart. The cart is a mixed reaction from different people, and it kind of depends on their current planting operations. What we have is, for our technology, the one thing we don't require a lot of water. We only apply about 10 gallons an acre, so very small amount of water. We're not irrigating by any way, shape, or form. But what we do need is power. So we do need 12 and a half horsepower per row that we're doing. So if you think about a 12-row planter, for instance, you would need 150 horsepower to power our operation, and then whatever you need for the planter on top of that. In some cases, farmers have big enough tractors that we could PTO drive our unit straight from the tractor and avoid the cart. We would put the water on the planter and put all of our mechanisms on the planter itself. We know we can do that up to about 12 rows. After that, it gets a little challenging because then if you think about, say 24 rows, you need 300 horsepower plus the planter. You're right up at the top of the horsepower range of what tractors can provide. Plus, to be frank, I don't think planter toolbars are made to withstand a lot of weight. They can withstand some weight because people put on, but not unlimited amounts of weight. So at some point, we offer this power cart, we call it. That can be the water tank. So it could, like on our demo unit, we have a 1,300 gallon water tank, and then we can add an engine. So that the farmer no longer has to pull the energy from the tractor, but we can self-propel the hydraulic system that we use. So it is optional to a certain degree. I know in North Dakota, equipment's big, so it may, you may get less PTO driving than you might in the South or something like that. But we have different variations that we can offer.
Yeah, I have a 60-foot planter, so when I'm turning on the headland just with that, it's makes me have to work a little bit. So that would make me work more, and obviously we would need that. But I think, the fact that the water pressure does cut that little very, very fine area, it seems to me that also would then give a better seed bed when you are cutting into that. And I'm very excited to see the technology, and I just think that it's going to progress better and further if it's successful and something that we can look at doing down the road if it's not retrofittable right now, I guess I'd have to say.
Right. No, I appreciate that.
Vanessa, both not necessarily just for Susterre specifically, but when you're kind of thinking about adopting new technology, new equipment, how are you measuring what success and your ROI would look like? And then what is kind of like the final decision to make you go over the top on that's worth getting in?
Well, as you said, it's the ROI. And so if you're looking at, if you say that we can increase our bushels by, say, 5 bushels to the acre, then you just take in, that's X amount of dollars, and how much does it cost to retrofit a planter that we've already retrofitted once because we have 2020 downforce. So it's is it doable? Is it manageable? And is the investment, what is the payout of the investment? How many years before you would pay out? Or do you see this as something that will improve things by, greater than that amount? And, just would have to be able to probably see it tried and see some, actual trials on similar type soil that we have, because it varies a lot. Even on our farm, we have some soil that's very sandy. We have some soil that's got clay and loam. And so we vary a lot by even the types of soil that we have. And so it's, everything has to be looked into. And thankfully, I'm passing that job on to my son, so he would be the one that has to look into this in more detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically it's the ROI, and is it doable?
Mm-hmm. In ag, it seems like the neighbor is kind of the best sales rep for any organization, right? If your neighbor is vouching for something, is that true for you? And is you or your family willing to, take the risk on kind of that first new piece of equipment, or technology or whatever that might be?
Ever since we started farming, we've been trying to, push forward on new technology. And so I would say we are one of the earlier adapters in our area, but we do have a good network of friends, and especially friends of our sons that went to NDSU with him, that are all very willing to look at these new things, try out different techniques, and talk to each other about it way more than I've ever talked to another farmer about doing things. They're constantly, checking, well, I have this issue. What did you do? And if have you had this issue? So I think that generation is maybe just really more used to getting on the phone and just saying, well, this didn't work. And we don't always want to go around saying what didn't work, but they're very good about saying, this didn't work. What are you trying? Or I tried this. Have you ever tried this? Or, so they definitely have a better network than we've ever had. And they get some good information that way. And I think the fact that they, a lot of the group went to NDSU, and a lot of his friends came out at the same time, started farming with the family around the same time. And maybe that's what it gets to. But I just, this generation has had the cell phone since teen, and we never did. Yeah. So they're just used to having it as information gatherer.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, Mike. So obviously ROI. How is Susterre thinking about your ROI, and what does that look like as you're kind of breaking into the market?
Yeah, no, I was glad, Vanessa, that you said that about ROI. I mean, farmers are really, especially kind of early adopter, innovator type farmers, are very sophisticated in the way that they look at machinery purchases and other investments for the farm. It's not emotion goes into it to a certain degree, but really farmers are looking with their financial advisors and saying, just cold hard fact, what does this look like on paper? Is there a proper payback? And that is something that we are really, hanging our hat on as well, because we're not a low cost, low value product. We're a high value, high cost product. But what we've seen in the results that we have is that we can typically provide, we think, on average, about a 2-year payback for the farmer. Now, we've done some focus groups with farmers in different areas, and we kind of said, if you didn't have money to buy the Susterre product, what would you invest in on the farm? And, most people are talking about buying new tractors or combines or working on their fields, tiling fields for drainage and things like that. And we said, great. What is the payback on that type of investment? And the answer that we were getting is that's typically like 5 to 7 year payback. So our view was, if we can really deliver, a 2-year payback, then we're expensive, but we're delivering a very fast payback for the farmer that might make that investment, or the investment for our product, worthwhile for the farmer. And really my view and what I've seen with farmers is, everyone's committed to protecting the land, protecting the water, everything that's so valuable. But really, there has to be that payback in order for farmers to try something as well. It needs to be a win-win on the economic side and the environmental side. So right now, we think we're there. But part of what we'll be doing, especially after, this second season of testing is, testing our payback calculator with farmers and just sitting down with them and saying, okay, how does this seem to you? Does it seem realistic? Are we dreaming, on what we're doing, but getting that feedback so we have a realistic model to use with the farmers.
Yeah, well, that's great, Mike and Vanessa. We kind of started this conversation talking about sustainability, regenerative practices on the farm. I know this is impossible to quantify, but when you're factoring in ROI, how would you say that kind of the sustainability piece ties into it? So, for example, this makes it 25% more expensive, but it makes me 50% more sustainable. How I know that's impossible to say, but like how does like the sustainability factor into your ROI equation?
Well, I think I stated before that the sustainability equation includes always trying to get better, farm better, farm more efficiently, farm better for the earth. It always has to be profitable, otherwise that's not sustainable. And so, you just take all of that together and say, okay, yes, I could spend, $10,000 on this piece of equipment, and it may or may not help the soil, but it's not going to give me any, difference in profit. Then it's kind of like, then why are we doing it? We're going to the no-till, minimum till to help the soil. And so, yes, this would be a way of going to more of the no-till, minimum till. Then it would be another step in the direction that we already are moving. We had a really hard time in earlier years with certain weeds and with certain issues that we weren't able to go more to the no-till. And, there were some things that helped, the Roundup Ready crops helped us do that because it was better for weed killing. And in areas where we can now control the weeds, we didn't have to use as much tillage. So there's a lot of things that loop together when you think of where we've been able to make improvements. A lot of technologies when it comes to our seed, when it comes to the fertilizer itself, when it comes to chemical technologies. And so all of these things working together have really, enabled us to do a better job. And so it's definitely something that we would consider as far as, taking a look at, seeing what it would do. And I think to me, it sounds like it would be a really interesting experiment planting one year and seeing if the results are there.
That's great. Well, yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about is that, sustainable farming has to be sustainable environmentally and also sustainable business wise for the farmer. So, yeah. Well, let's talk about the industry at large. Mike, you're breaking into the industry with a brand new product, pretty cutting edge. Vanessa, you've have extensive background, very impressive resume, and also very innovative in adopting new technology. How would you say kind of the industry does overall with allowing new technology to enter into the market? And then Vanessa, I guess, how would you say that, from a farmer perspective, you and farmers at large are at adopting that technology? So maybe, Mike, let's start with you. As a startup breaking into the ag market.
Yeah, no, I think it's challenging to break into the ag market. I think the exciting thing about ag right now, which, people in the industry would realize, but maybe people outside the industry don't really think about, is that there is a lot of innovation going on right now. And so when, putting myself in the shoes of a farmer, there's just so many things that you could try out there. And I think farmers are inherently cautious about what they adopt. And so when you try to break in, you really have to, I think, for a couple of reasons, start local and then expand regionally. One is the factor that you guys talked about earlier with the neighbor factor, that people watch what their neighbors are doing. So if you can get, that early adopter to have the technology, then you can that's like a stake in the ground that you can build out from regionally. And then, I think farmers have seen a lot of supposed benefits from a lot of different technology. And so you tend, as I'll say an outsider, we feel like we're in the industry, but, the thing of, well, you did that in Tennessee and that's great, but have you ever tried it, in my neighborhood, in our conditions? Because, the conditions are very localized in the way farmers go. The soil, the amount of precipitation, all those things can vary. And then, of course, the trap is you do it 1 year and then they say, okay, well, that's fine. But the last year was a drought. Now this year we have a wet year, so do it again. So you kind of get in this loop of prove it, which is, hard for a startup to kind of go years, seasons and have to keep redoing it. But it is part of what you have to do. You just hope the results you're showing are so clearly beneficial that you can get someone to buy your technology. So that is a challenge. But other than that, it doesn't differ from other industries that I've worked in. You've got innovators, you've got early adopters, and then you got the main group of people that are kind of mainstream purchasers. So you really want, if you're new, you got to play at the early adopter side. And then later on, you hope you get general adoption in the industry.
Yeah. And I think, well, I'm just really proud of Grand Farm and the things that are being done out there, because that brings a tableau where people can come in and it's not, it's not owned by a company that is going to try to do things so that they can be shown to be better or whatever. It's a neutral ground for people to show things on. And I think that's super important. And I think it's the 29th, isn't it, that they're going to be out there and doing some more field trials in the afternoon. Is that right, Andrew? Mm-hmm. Yes. So I have already encouraged my son and some friends of his to come out and take a look at this, because you really can't tell people about some of this technology and how it works and then answer their questions when you've only seen it for like 5 minutes. And it's like, wait a minute, I don't have that much knowledge of this piece of equipment. And so the more people that can get out and see something in action in a neutral area, to me is really important. And for people to be able to ask the questions and to get some answers. And so I'm really looking forward to the 29th to see if other farmers, when they see this, have the reaction I did. I think the technology is really sound from what I can tell. And, it's for me, it's more about retrofitting and, trying something out. And, but I'm very excited to see this in action.
That's great. Well, Vanessa, I wasn't going to plug it, but thanks for plugging our Autonomous Nation conference, which is August 29th. That is about connecting the autonomous industry with the region and the ecosystem. So we'll be at Microsoft Fargo campus, and in the afternoon, we'll be going out to the farm for demos, where Mike will also be demoing his product. Well, maybe as we're looking to wrap up here, Vanessa, I got to ask you this question. You got a platform here. You can get your message out there. What do you want industry to solve? What are some of the biggest challenges on your farm that you want to see solved?
This, what Mike has been dealing with is one of the issues, having a good seed bed and having good placement of the seed is always an issue. Some of the things, we've tiled quite a bit of ground, and that has been one thing that has allowed us to get in better and having the soil be more mellow in the spring. And so that's a good thing. But we've done a lot of things to our planters and equipment to try to get that good seed bed and, all of that. Another area is spot spraying. We've had all kinds of different ways of people trying to go out and do some spot spraying, whether it's from a little four-wheeler to, whatever. And because there's always either poles or wires, depending on if you're flying it on or if you're driving it on yourself, but there's always a little spot in the field that needs something to be sprayed. And so when we saw the drones that could do some of that, and I think the one thing was a little bigger than the drone, and they wanted to do your whole field. And it's like, and maybe eventually that's going to be something. I couldn't see that it could carry enough water to do a quarter efficiently, but it's, that's one of the areas. And then information, all the information that we gather, that's another thing that has kind of caused not more issues, but there's so many different things that we need to take a look at. How do we use the information better? What are the different levels of information we already have that we don't necessarily even realize that we can use for specific things? Who owns the information? And so I think those are big issues that we're going to have to tackle as farmers, because there's a lot of information that we gain through our planting and everything like that. And there's a lot of people who are interested in just taking it and using it. And so I think there has to be some discussion about how that can be done, and maybe by people who actually want to purchase the information and use it for the public good, or for universities and things to do better research from there.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, that's great. Well, I just want to, as we're looking to wrap up here, offer Mike or Vanessa, if either of you have questions for each other, I think that would be a great time to ask that.
Yeah, I mean, well, Vanessa, I mean, I'm wondering, are you seeing, I don't know if you're seeing on your farm, like any effects of loss of soil, topsoil, or soil organic matter over the seasons? Maybe you're avoiding it because you're using more sustainable practices, but that's something that we've been seeing. I know maybe in South Dakota more than North Dakota, perhaps, is, this appearance of dead soil with no organic action there, no worms, nothing there. And, when we see that, you talk, I think the points that you raised about important things, I'm just wondering, are you seeing issues like that with your neighbors or in North Dakota around seed, soil deterioration and the need to regenerate that soil?
We definitely have some soil erosion. This last winter, there was a lot of wind and a lot of dirt that took off with it. On our farm, it's where we have sugar beets, and if we can't get some cover crop in early enough for it to start coming up, then it goes across the winter just not covered. And so when you have a crop like sugar beets, it's something you have to really work very much harder on. The other fields that we have enough cover to not have that issue happen. But yeah, it's definitely an issue. And there was a lot of soil moving last year.
Yeah, I hate seeing, I mean, it's interesting having spent a lot of time in North Dakota this year. It is amazing the wind that you guys get across the plain, the hot wind. But, it's sickening to me when you sit, and I've done this in Iowa as well, where you're on a farm that's practicing regenerative ag, and you look across the street or down the street and you see those little tornadoes of soil being picked up and carried away. It's just like, oh my gosh, that's like, money in the bank that's blowing away, literally. Yeah. Can I ask one other question? Do you think that farmers tend to over-apply chemicals and seed with the thought that they're going to, like on the seed side, they're going to get emergence or germination. Therefore, they're going to over-apply and try to offset some of the losses? Or with chemicals, with runoff or volatilization, they're going to lose some of what they're doing. So they over-apply things today to compensate for that.
I would say that most of the farmers that I know, especially in North Dakota, we do not, because number one, the cost of chemical, the cost of fertilizer, the cost of seeds are so expensive that, you don't want to waste any of it and throw it away. Overplanting can end up giving you more issues with your crop, because if you get too high of a population, like say in corn, you're going to have a lower yield. It's just not going to work out that well. Too much fertilizer. There are some parts of the fertilizer that you can build in the soil, but then there's parts that are just going to run off if you put in too much. Because we raise sugar beets in the valley, we have been testing soils and testing fertility for 50 or more years. And that's something that some of the I states were not necessarily doing back then, because we have to make sure that the level of fertilizer in a sugar beet field is not built up like you would want it to be built up for a cornfield. And so we are very careful about using soil testing and using people, certified crop people, to come and help us make the decisions and then check on our crop during the year. And I think that's something that I'm hoping the network is growing, because to find the certified crop people is not always that easy. And, I think we could use more out in the neighborhood, and they definitely have good information to bring to you.
Great. Well, Vanessa, Mike, Grand Farm believes that if you can get bring the ecosystem together, get the growers, the industry, the academia, the policymakers together in a room, that's where innovation comes from. So I think this conversation is a great example of that in practice. So, Mike, I really want to thank you for coming, and Vanessa, appreciate you. And again, invite everybody to our Autonomous Nation conference on August 29th. Mike will be there demoing. Vanessa, I can't wait to hopefully meet your son there. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in this week.
Thank you. I want to just add one more plug, and that's for our universities and for our grower groups. They are both in the work of trying to make sure that farmers are getting the information they need for new technology and for all of the things, all of our inputs. So that's one more part of our system that we rely on. But thanks a lot. And thank you, Andrew and Michael.
No, thank you. This has been great. I look forward to continuing the discussion, Vanessa, when we see each other in a couple weeks.
Sounds good.
Great.
Take care.
And that will wrap up this month's episode of Grand Farmer. We really want to thank Mike and Vanessa for this great conversation. It was really interesting to dive into a little bit around sustainable practices and how farmers are factoring in that ROI when it comes to that. If you enjoy Grand Farmer, I would encourage you to check out our Autonomous Nation conference on Tuesday, August 29th. We'll be gathering at Microsoft's Fargo campus in the morning for some really interesting conversations around the future of autonomy in agriculture and beyond. And then we will be going out to our farm in Castleton, North Dakota, where we'll be doing demonstrations from 2 to 4. Tickets for the morning portion of the event can be bought at grandfarm.com. And then the public demonstration area from 2 to 4 is going to be free and open to the public. I hope you can join us for that. So if you want to learn more about Grand Farm and the work we're doing, go to grandfarm.com. And I want to, as always, thank all of our partners for helping make this possible. Thank you, and we'll talk soon.